We're going to extract some of the vermicast from the bottom of the never fill bin, preferably using a fork so that we don't slice the worms. We've actually modified the design on this recently, where we have access from two sides, which makes it a lot easier to get the vermicast out, but for demonstration purposes that'll do. Now, as we can see, there's still a little bit of egg shells and a bit of chicken bone still there, and what we also find is there's still some worms in there. Now, if we put that out on the garden, unfortunately those worms will die, but there is a little trick that we can do to rescue those worms. So all we need to do is just get a garbage bag, and we'll put the vermicast out on the garbage bag, and we'll make the heap roughly into the shape of a pyramid. Now you can see there's a few worms, quite a few worms that we can see there at the moment. If we'd leave that for a couple of minutes, they would have buried away down inside that, away from the light. We would then just scrape the outer edge of that pyramid away until we start seeing the worms again, putting the excess dirt back in the bucket, till eventually we would only have a tiny little mound right in the middle where all the worms had congregated, and we can then just pick them up, put them back in our bin, and we haven't lost a single worm. We'll just put these little fellas back. Here's an example of the difference between the compost worms. As you can see, they're much redder. They're a smaller type worm, and these are the earthworms. Bigger, darker brown, and as you can see, the earthworms are already trying to get out of there as quick as they can, whereas the compost worms, because they're in their own bedding there, they're happy to just stay, or most of them are, in the one spot. So the idea is that we use these compost worms to create the vermicast, the worm castings, and then when we put the castings into our garden, you'll find that these worms, and often much bigger and fatter ones than these guys, will come back into the garden, and that's the ideal situation. Having their own worm farms is identifying the worm eggs. So we'll just see if we can't, see if this will come up on camera. But we see these tiny little things here like brown onions. They're worm eggs, and those eggs there could have anything from 2 to 20 babies inside them. It's a thing to remember about the worm eggs, that if we actually pick them up with our hands, the salt in the sweat on our hands will be enough to sort of kill those eggs. So if you are wanting to play around with or collect the eggs, it's best to wear rubber gloves. Otherwise you probably won't get anything out of them, they'll become infertile. This is where we actually harvest our worms. I might bring up a wheelbarrow load of castings from around the back of the horse shed that is full of worms, and we'll put them here and give it half an hour or so, and the worms will burrow away down underneath, because they don't like they like to keep away from the sunlight. So we then just quickly pull the top layer away until we start seeing worms. And this stuff that I'm pulling off is going to be what we're going to make our worm tea out of. So we get to the stage where we've pulled that off. Then if we have a look I'll just get the, sorry. If we go a bit deeper into the heap, what we can see in the sunlight, that's just teeming with the compost worms. And leaving our worms in there. To make tea, and I make it in a 200 litre vat at a time, but all we need to do is get probably 3 double handfuls like this of the vermicast. As you can see, there's still a bit of straw and things in it, but that's good because the fungi will be attaching to that as well as all of the bacteria. And I'll put, say, as I say, we're talking about 3 double handfuls where it's approximately between 2 and 3 kilograms of vermicast. We'll put that in a tub. I'll add my tank water or rainwater. We'll also then add about, for a 200 litre brew, we'll add about 1 litre of molasses and a little bit of fish emulsion. And for this, in a 200 litre drum, I would only put about 3 capfuls. You don't need very much of this at all. It's the nitrogen in the fish emulsion that provides the bodies for the new bacteria, and the carbon, the sugar in the molasses provides the carbon for the food for the biology. So we've got the castings, the molasses, the fish emulsion. We fill up our drum. Here we've got our 200 litres of water with the castings, the molasses and the fish emulsion, and we've just got here a simple little aquarium pump. They cost about $30–35 in the hardware store or in the pet stores. That uses such a minute amount of electricity that you can just have that going all the time. We just have a couple little tubes off it so it's continually keeping the liquid aerated, and there's no reason why you couldn't. It doesn't have to be this size, you can have a smaller size, but the home gardener can have something like this brewing away virtually all the time, and every now and then as they take stuff out, just add a little bit more fresh castings, a little bit of extra molasses and fish emulsion, and they can be continually making their own liquid fertiliser at home. And if they've got a little bit of an entrepreneurial streak about them, they can be selling it to their neighbours as well, because we sell probably 100 litres of that at each market to people, and every time they buy the worm tea they come back and want more. It's just and it's so cheap and effective to make. Well, in the book, David Murphy's book, he said that he doesn't empty it out, he just keeps using it like a ginger beer plant, just topping it up all the time.